Story 1. It was Halloween weekend, and this year it fell on a Saturday. My mom always took Halloween decorations and handing out candy very seriously, almost like she was in competition with the neighbors to have the best decorated house. We live on a corner in a suburban neighborhood, so when we decorate, we also decorate the side of the house to make it more appealing for trick-or-treaters. Since Halloween was on a Saturday, kids started trick-or-treating earlier in the day. However, it was a cold and cloudy day, with rain predicted in the forecast. My mom couldn't understand that the weather might be a factor for the low number of trick-or-treaters. When a few groups skipped our house, she assumed it was because we didn't have enough decorations to attract them. She insisted I go up to the attic and grab whatever Halloween decorations were left in storage. I told her it wasn't necessary, but she insisted, so I reluctantly went to the attic, which was directly above my bedroom. The attic door is in the upstairs hallway, so I pulled down the ladder and climbed up. We have the holiday containers organized in a specific way, so I went to the section where the Halloween decorations were. There were only a couple of containers left up there, so I opened one to check and thought it was good enough. I started dragging the container toward the attic door and carefully slid it down the ladder. Just as I was about to climb down, I heard a sound coming from the opposite side of the attic. It sounded like wood creaking or cracking, as if something heavy was putting pressure on it. I looked over to the far corner, where we had a wall of containers, but I didn't see anything. The sound of wood cracking in an attic isn't all that strange, so I didn't think much of it and climbed down with the container. Once I brought the decorations downstairs, my mom and I went out to put them up in the front yard. It was really windy, and it felt like it could rain any minute. The number of trick-or-treaters didn't improve, and my mom was disappointed. She takes candy just as seriously as the decorations, always making goodie bags with a variety of candies. It was clear she wasn't going to give most of them away at this rate. As the day went on, I stayed in my room playing video games on my laptop, while my mom stayed downstairs, waiting for any more trick-or-treaters. It started raining heavily in the late afternoon, which pretty much ended any chance of more kids coming to the house. By evening, it had turned into a full-blown thunderstorm, kind of perfect for Halloween, in a spooky way. I was deep into my game when I heard another creak from above me, coming from the attic. It was the second time I'd heard something up there. I made a mental note of it, but shrugged it off again. That night, I stayed up late playing video games, as I often did on weekends. It was still raining heavily outside, and my parents had already gone to bed. Suddenly, I heard footsteps above me in the attic. This time, they were unmistakable. Someone was walking around up there. My first thought was that maybe my mom was putting something away in the attic, but it was really late. I paused my game and went into the hallway to check. That's when I noticed that the attic door was slightly open. My heart started pounding as I listened. The footsteps had stopped, but now I could hear noises from downstairs in the kitchen. Someone was moving things around, opening the fridge. I felt a surge of panic. I tiptoed down the hall to my parents' room and quietly opened the door. Both my mom and dad were fast asleep in bed. That's when my stomach twisted with fear. I quietly shook my dad awake and whispered, "There's someone in the house." He sat up immediately, asking, "What do you mean?" I told him, "There's someone in the kitchen right now. I think they were hiding in the attic." My dad isn't a big or confrontational man, but he keeps a police baton under the bed, just in case of emergencies. He grabbed it and told me to stay quiet. He went out into the hallway to take a look, while I waited by the door, heart racing. When he came back, he whispered that he had seen someone climbing back into the attic. We quickly locked the bedroom door, and my dad called 911. By this time, my mom was awake too, and we all sat quietly, trying not to panic. It felt like forever, but eventually, the police arrived. When they searched the attic, they found a homeless-looking man hiding behind the wall of containers in the far corner. The noises I had been hearing all day were from him. The man didn't try to fight or lie. He told the police that he had walked in through the front door, which had been left open the day before when we were setting up decorations. He didn't have a place to stay, so he decided to hide in our attic. He had brought one of our blankets up there, and he was living off some peanut butter he found in the kitchen. The whole situation was disturbing, and I still wonder what might have happened if I or my dad had confronted him instead of letting the police handle it. My parents didn't press charges, but the thought of someone living in our attic for nearly 2 days still haunts me. Story 2. When I was 18, I threw a house party at my parents' house for Halloween. It was supposed to be a closed invite, meaning I told people not to bring strangers. This was one of the rules my parents gave me. They were out of town that weekend, which was why I could throw the party in the first place. Another rule they set was that the house had to be even cleaner than it was before the party. I invited about 50 people, and around 40 showed up. The party started at 6 p.m., just as it was getting dark outside. We set up the party so it would take place both in the backyard and on the first floor of the house. My parents had left me money for refreshments like soda and food, which I put out in the kitchen for everyone. I told my parents it would be a non-alcoholic party, but I think they knew that wasn't going to happen. One of my friends, who was a few years older, brought his DJ equipment and got the party going. By the time it was dark, the party was in full swing, and it seemed like everyone was having a good time. I was pleased that people had listened to my instructions and didn't bring any strangers. I recognized pretty much everyone there. Since it was my party, I didn't drink too much because I wanted to stay somewhat responsible. But as the night went on, everyone else was getting drunker. At one point, a friend came out of the house with some food and asked me, "Who's that guy in the skeleton bodysuit?" I didn't recall seeing anyone in that costume, so I went inside to check. In the kitchen, I asked the people there if they had seen someone in a skeleton suit. One of them told me they saw him snooping around the house, which made me immediately concerned. I asked if anyone knew who he was, or if someone had invited him, but no one did. I started looking around the house for this guy, and eventually, I found him walking down the stairs. I asked him who he was, and he simply said, "Mike. I was using the bathroom upstairs." His voice was deep, and he sounded older. He also looked stockier, not like a regular guest. I asked him who had invited him, and he replied, "Tom." I didn't know anyone named Tom, so I asked again, "Who's Tom?" But instead of answering, I asked him to take off his mask. He ignored me and just walked past me, heading toward the front door. Then he left. I quickly ran upstairs to check if anything was missing. All the bedroom doors were closed except for the bathroom, and after a quick look, it seemed like nothing had been stolen. I locked the front door and told some of my friends about how weird that situation was. I also went outside to ask if anyone knew who invited the guy, but no one had a clue. As the night wore on, people started leaving. By midnight, the party was winding down. A few close friends stayed behind to help clean up. In the end, it was a successful party, and once everyone was gone, I got ready for bed. My friend Vinny decided to crash on the couch downstairs. After brushing my teeth and getting into my pajamas, I decided to hang out with Vinny for a bit in the living room. We had a few drinks and watched some funny YouTube videos on TV. My little sister, who was 14, was already asleep in her room since she didn't join the party. Suddenly, Vinny and I both heard noises coming from upstairs. It sounded like footsteps, and I figured we might have woken my sister. I waited to hear her go to the bathroom, but I never heard her door open. Confused, I decided to go upstairs and check on her. I knocked on her door, but she didn't answer, so I opened it a crack and saw she was still asleep. Now, I was starting to get worried. Where were those footsteps coming from? I went to my parents' room, and strangely, their door wasn't fully shut. I had made sure it was closed before the party. So this was odd. I pushed the door open slightly and looked inside. As I backed out of the room, I glanced through the crack in the door, and that's when I saw him. The guy in the skeleton bodysuit. I couldn't believe my eyes. Somehow, I managed not to scream or run. I pretended I didn't see him, quietly closed the door, and went downstairs. I told Vinny that the guy from earlier was still in the house. Vinny called 911 right away, while I tiptoed back upstairs, went into my sister's room, and gently woke her up. I told her what was happening, and made sure she stayed quiet. Together, we snuck downstairs to meet Vinny by the back door. We all went outside, through the backyard, and over to our neighbor's house, where we rang the bell repeatedly. Our neighbor let us wait there until the police arrived. By the time the police showed up, the guy had escaped. He had crawled out of my parents' bedroom window, which was now wide open. The closet door was also open, where my dad kept his safe. It was clear the guy had been trying to get into the safe, or even steal it. It was unsettling to think that this man had walked into the party unnoticed. He knew about the safe, which made it seem like he had some inside knowledge. We never found out who he was, but it was clear he was older and knew details about our house. My sister ended up telling our parents about the whole thing, and needless to say, that was the last party I was ever allowed to throw at their house. Story 3. In 2016, when I was 15, I wanted to make my last year of trick-or-treating special. My mom, being pretty laid back, allowed me to turn it into a multi-day event. The plan was to have a sleepover with friends Davis and Zach the night before Halloween, skip school the next day to trick-or-treat with Davis, and then have a sleepover with my girlfriend Amber. The basement of our house had just been renovated into a man cave, and it was perfect for the sleepover. The basement had a long, creepy hallway leading to the man cave, and the light switch for the hallway didn't work, adding to the eerie atmosphere. My mom baked cookies for us, and we headed down to the cave around 11 p.m. After watching the original Scream, we started Paranormal Activity. None of us had seen it before, which was why I picked it. Not even 30 seconds into the movie, the motion sensor light in the backyard turned on, flooding the room with light and ruining the creepy vibe. I waited for it to turn off, then resumed the movie. It happened again after 30 seconds, which began to annoy me. Davis asked about the light, but I had no explanation. We went upstairs to check the backyard, but the light had turned off by the time we got there. We waited around for a few minutes, but nothing happened. We went back to the basement, turned off the movie, and decided to just hang out and talk. Everyone fell asleep, except me. While scrolling on my phone, the motion light turned on again. I was exhausted, but decided to check the backyard one last time. I saw no one, and gave up, heading back to the basement to call it a night. The next night, Halloween, was a bit bittersweet. I had a bag full of candy, but felt a pang of sadness. Realizing this would be my last Halloween trick-or-treating, I tried to enjoy the night, despite lingering thoughts from the previous night. I debated whether to tell Amber about the strange occurrences, but decided not to ruin the evening. While trick-or-treating with Amber, she suddenly yelled in pain. A rock had been thrown at her by a guy in a clown mask. The clown was part of the so-called clown epidemic going around at the time. I told the clown to leave, but he just stood there, seeming out of place with his normal clothes beneath the mask. We decided to cut the night short and skipped a few houses out of anxiety. Back at my house, my friends left, and it was just Amber and me. We sorted through the candy and decided to watch Paranormal Activity. As we watched, the power went out, and the lights in the basement turned off. I checked the weather app, which showed normal conditions with no storms. Amber, feeling scared, decided to come upstairs with me to check the generator in the backyard. The thought of the previous night came creeping back, and I felt uneasy. As we approached the backyard, I noticed the motion light was off. We were only a few feet from the generator when I heard a twig snap. Amber and I felt like we were being watched. We decided to head back inside, and just then, I saw him, the same clown from earlier, standing by the shed. He stared at us, then suddenly lunged forward and started sprinting toward us. We bolted inside and locked the back door. We hid in the basement, but I realized I hadn't locked the back door. We heard a slam from upstairs, and the house fell silent. Amber texted 911, explaining that someone was in the house. Minutes felt like hours as we waited in the dark. I heard footsteps coming down the stairs and down the hallway. I had to cover Amber's mouth to keep her quiet. When the footsteps reached our direction, I grabbed a beer bottle, preparing to confront the intruder if necessary. The footsteps stopped, and then we heard sirens outside. I saw this as a chance to act. I ran at the intruder, swinging the bottle, but I tripped and fell. Looking up, I saw the clown mask staring down at me. My swing had barely affected him, and he seemed ready to leave. The intruder ran up the stairs, and I heard the back door open and slam. I ran upstairs, let the police in, and told them where the intruder had gone. Unfortunately, they never caught him. To this day, I can't go down to that man cave alone without feeling anxious. I'm just thankful Amber and I survived, and always look back, grateful that we're still alive. The sight of that clown mask staring down at me while I was on the floor is a memory I'll never forget.